are just about, we're doing a class, group class tomorrow, 11:30 to 1 o'clock. And we're doing it by the Bestor Street Park, which is just around the corner from the dojo location. So it'll be outdoor, masks, social distancing, movement, and some weapons work. We'll also do some basic, maybe for people that haven't done it, just an intro to Tai Chi. So that's 11:30 to 1 tomorrow. And so that's in the works. So anyway, I thought what we do is just going to go over some of Bo Sensei's words, and we'll kind of, I don't know, maybe do a preview of some of the patterns that we might do outside tomorrow. Let's see. We're planning to try to shoot outside, but it just the glare. I can't really see myself or center myself on the camera, so we're in here. And tomorrow somebody will be shooting and keeping the class centered. So that should be easier. Okay, but let's just start by going over a couple of things. And what I thought I'd do is we got into some stuff last class, and looking ahead, there was a whole bunch of stuff that I thought was fascinating, just sort of made it too long last time. And where is this? Well, let's see. Embarrassing when you have the whole thing scoped out, and then all of a sudden you can't find what you're looking for. Huh. Well, let's see. We went into the Su character, which Ho Sensei said is not found in things outside of Japanese. But you seem to indicate, that the actual Su, continual vibration of Su naturally leads to Fu. Su, Fu. So Su, there's a little bit of a shift there. Su. U functions to separate spirit and matter. The seed syllable has two dimensions. One ascends upward. That becomes the seed syllable off. The other descends towards earth. That becomes the seed syllable O. Su. Su. The tension between A and O is the origin of gravity. Oh. And so there, we might say the gravity, the beginnings of the physical universe. Gravity being very important in terms of the physical universe. But it's a binding force, keeps things together, aligned. No gravity, everything would just sort of drift apart. Okay? There's a whole bunch of stuff that, oh, okay. And again, the kontotama, o, and u, e, I. Su, and apparently, well, since it would go not just E, but you go and the kind of the sustained sound obviously includes breath. Okay, in other words, there's sound, but breath and sound. So breath and sound are probably, I mean, say it's maybe they're so close or so interrelated. We would separate, oh, you have to breathe to make a sound. But from what he's talking about, there's breath and there's sound, okay? Or conversely, the sound, if there's another breath, if the sound continue itself. So alpha, omega, whatever you want to call it. A, O, U, E, I, Su, U, A, O, U, Re, I, Re, I, Gi. And, yeah, so, you know, that was something that we covered. We may go a little bit more into that, but I thought what we do is just go into a little bit of motion. So we're going to shift. So I'm going to take my clock. And we got another person, okay? Okay. And try to get the wide screen. And I thought we'd do a little bit. Start out with full view. Oops. Right back here. The chill universe lets you know it's there at all times. Okay. Kick the feet, form a triangle, point, base. We've been using the staff for some of the Tai Chi stances, but Hiki Sensei used to always make sure he had that whole sense that there was a staff length. You weren't just standing with your feet kind of twisted or too far apart, or he didn't like the T. Most of the Aikido teachers stand in some form of the T. All right, okay. And then, you know, the thrusting motion, the cutting motion, and the cutting motion, okay? Again, it's a striking move, but this also with the spear is a thrusting motion, a piercing motion. Ooh. So what I thought we'd do is just maybe do a little work, okay? I could face the camera, okay? And get a little bit more of a full body design here. But pick your staff or your instrument up, okay? Notice how here we get the feet. It's not an exaggerated posture, okay? And not a set position. You want kind of a buoyant, springy feeling in the body, and yet a kind of a mobile ground. So right from here, you'll notice, for example, we get the base, the point. But you see, this is kind of like a hypotenuse. I don't want to be over here. Now this goes to cover my heart, about heart level. Okay. This is right on the hip. And you notice how the line outward from the foot and the staff. They form a point out there. And that would be the thrust of the motion. Okay? So let's just try that. So we'll kind of start easy. Boom, boom. And see from where you are, just see if we can sort of blend with each other. Boom, boom. Okay. Now the hands, a lot of times people corkscrew, but this is like the sword, right? Now, not that sort of motion, but right about here, but there's a natural closing motion. It goes back, not here, but the natural movement here. So I'll move back a little bit. Notice it's not just an arm motion. See, there's a wave going. See how it goes through the body? And then here on the way back, it's not a pulling motion, it's just a natural resetting of the motion. Boom. I'm thrusting about level with my own heart. If we go this way, you see you actually have a bend in the wrist, so we're not hitting anything, but if we did it, we'd Nikyo ourselves. So this is right under the heart, but the tip is heart level. And you adjust if the staff is longer. Okay. Okay, that's a basic movement. Now off of the thrust, this is also a basic motion. Okay, now just an arm movement. Kind of a form with a little bit of strength in it, but boom, 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 boom. This covers the head. Boom. Also, if you go, covers the body out here. Boom, 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 boom. And you can combine them. Thrust, up, down, re-thrust, up and down. So let's see if we can do that as a repetitive movement. Thrust, up, down, re-thrust, up, down, re-thrust, up, down, re-thrust. Okay, good. Okay. Any questions so far about any of those movements? Just the thrust? It starts out. You don't want this hand to be too far out, but you also don't want to. And here. See, this is not so much raising. See how the hips rotate? Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so let's play with some maybe rhythms with those two, okay? So thrust, basic, up and down. Thrust, basic, up and down. Thrust, notice how again, the wave doesn't start in the hand, the wave actually starts in the body. Boom, boom. Okay, and likewise, this motion doesn't start with the hand, it starts in the body. Boom. The down doesn't come from the hands. Boom, boom, starts in the body. Boom, 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 boom. So if we were to go boom, 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 boom. So the crashing of the wave doesn't start in the hand, it starts in the body. Boom. The cresting of the wave doesn't start in the hand, it starts in the body. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. The tide doesn't start in the hands, tide starts in the body. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? So try that a couple of times and we'll see if there are any questions. Okay. Anybody with a question on that? See, body, hand, staff or spear. Body, hand, staff or spear. Body, hand, staff, spear, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Anybody question or? Okay. A couple of things here. A lot of things, for example, like offering your wrist, is very much like you're offering. It's the thrusting motion of the spirit. Boom. Boom. Now, and the feeling that goes here, but it can change direction. Boom. It can change direction. It can change direction. It can change direction. See, the change of direction. Here, here, it's like boom, boom. See, once you get the relationship, body is the wave, boom, or the current, boom. It gets very fluid, boom, 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 boom. Just these two movements, boom, 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 boom. Okay, so just toying around with those two movements takes you a little bit on a dimensional journey. Proper hands, proper feet, proper form, boom. Okay. the movement frees up a little bit, different level, not just boom, freer movement. Okay, boom, 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 boom. The freer movement becomes so there's kind of a dimensional progression, starting out the basics. The basics aren't there. You try to go finer, it gets sloppier. But if you just so the thrusting motion is a lot like the offering of a wrist. So here, I'm caught, but here, now there's a little bit of relationship and then that way forth. Right? Hand to body. Ikizushi Sensei used to say ki, ken, tai. Okay. 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 I might change it a little bit. I might say ki. Ki is the movement of the current or the wave rising, falling. All right. The body, if the eye is very transparent, free, there's no block between the energy moving and the body moving. Now that's translated into the movement of the ken, sword, or the spear. Boom, boom. The instrument, so to speak. Boom. Okay? So those are just a couple of tips right there. Now we can go, for example, we've done that motion. Right? That motion. Okay? Now we can go. Okay? In other words, what we're doing is a so I'm thinking of it as a striking motion. But if this were a spear, this would pierce, that's primary, but it would also cut around here. So this can be a cutting motion. Oh, that's different than a striking motion. Oops. Yep. Boom. Boom. So let's start from the thrust position. Boom. Boom. Now, hand up, other hand down. Boom. Boom. And as you're cutting, the body is also open. If I'm cutting here, and there's an incoming thrust, but if I'm opening, I can cut off of that opening motion. I've got my ground, got my core hips, and if there is an incoming, we're off the line. Oh, for both. Oh, 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 oh. Okay. And not so much swinging, yoko. See the rotation of the actual cutting motion of the body, but the rotation makes it a yoko. It's not so much the yoko's in the hand. It's in the rotation of the body. Boom, boom. So let me get my hand. And there's a lot of gap between the two. If I go this way, this way, this way, this way. See? The body turns. So the body, whoops. It's one of the drawbacks. So let's do this. We will, because we can change it. We will. Here, 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 here. here, 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 and here. So again, your feet reflect that natural triangle. Boom, boom. See, the first thing that moves is actually the key. Key moves first. And it goes not into the hands, it goes through the body. And then the hands are really a part of here, the ken or the spear. Okay, so well, then you can move very quickly. Whoa. Okay, so let's do this. Start out right side, and we'll just see how my body is rotating without contorting. Okay. Any questions about that motion side to side? Okay. Sort of
might be too much of a detail, but when your feet are moving, is the back foot stepping up and the first, or is the front foot stepping back?
Well, the back foot becomes the front foot. Okay, the back foot becomes the front foot. Therefore, what was the front foot has to become the back foot. Yeah, we're just changing harmony. Huh? Whoa, whoa. Okay. Let's, what I'm kind of seeing, I'm seeing this and this. Okay, but I like to see, what I like to see is that. 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 In other words, you know, see the set right there? See, key moves, it can change, or it can be very still without setting. Okay, so key, tai, then the ken, key, movement of key, tai. See, if I let ground, the movement seems to be pushing me around. So then I learn to set to get the form. But here, now for example, here, there's a little swirl in the ocean of ki, right? There's not a swirl. Translates directly to the body, boom, and there's a motion, all right? Boom, boom. I'd like everybody to do that. The feeling is you lighten up, boom. Whoa. Without mentioning names, Nado Sensei, trained at Hombu Dojo, a wide variety of teachers there. One of them, who taught on Sundays, he really worked the weapon system. It's very good. But there's another one that, Yamaguchi Sensei. And And those sensei, of the two teachers, they both have their strengths. But he said the one thing Yamaguchi had, he had speed. He had speed. But if he had speed, now we're making other changes. Here, boom, 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 boom. So what I wanted you to do a little bit, focus a little bit. Now, okay, with the body, yeah, the body has certain things, the alignment of the feet. But for the movement of the body, there's a movement of the ki. Right? The ki moves the way ki moves. Ki moves this way, can change move that way. These are forms, goes out, comes back. It's like the tide. Boom, 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 boom. Tide out, tide back. Tide out, tide back. But tide out, ki moves first, tide out. Ki moves first, tide back. Ki moves first, tide out. Ki moves first, tide in. So we could also be doing another Aikido associated motion. So, so try that a couple of times. See if you can kind of get that place, relationship. Ki moves first, then body, then the staff spear. Right about here, you see the ki itself has its own sort of breath pattern. Whatever the movement, ki moves first, ki moves first, ki moves first, ki moves first. The ki can do that, boom, 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 boom. So I might change it a little bit from ki ken tai, which is what Hikizuchi sensei used to emphasize, to ki tai and ken, or spear, or staff. Same thing with the, or do swing the boken, be the same thing. Try it. Any form you're learning, I'm learning a form. And then I get better with the form. I start putting my own ki into the form. It's better. But what if there's a larger ki? Boom, boom. And in that system, that larger thing moves first. Boom. Goes through the body. Boom. Boom. Any motion starts first in ki. Play with it. Whatever your motion is, first started in ki. It has to go through the body, then it goes through your instrument. It could be a boken, a real sword, a staff, a shorter staff, longer staff, or spear. But there's a harmony there. So Hikizuchi Sensei talked about the harmony of ki, ken, tai. Okay? And I remember one time he had me in front of a glass, demonstrating some movements. And he looked at me and said, you know, your ki and your tai are moving, but your ken ain't. I was like, oh my God, I was like totally like blown apart, right? It says your ki and your tai are moving, but your ken ain't. Okay. And then of course you try to move the staff at the time faster. And you says you're getting worse. Okay. So my sense now, you have a harmony between ki, your tai, and the ken. Boom. So he said my tai was moving and my ki was moving, but my ken wasn't. So boom, 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 boom. So I would hope after 50 years that I had the harmony of all three. There's motion, boom, 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 boom. Now, what was wrong on that day when he says your ken ain't moving? Well, it was called I. It was called I. I'm doing the movement, I'm moving it, I'm doing this form. When I'm doing that, I don't get the unity of the ki, ken, tai. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, let's see. Anybody with a question on that? That takes, I would say it takes a little practice, which means you got to kind of realize what we're trying to do. Okay, so we have this motion. Well, in ki, there's that motion. That motion goes through the body, and then it goes through the staff or spear. Boom. So I'm thinking, I may get a couple of them, right? See, I'm thinking about the energy, and then the body moves, but the staff is too heavy and it's behind everything. Boom, 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 boom. Unity, ki, ken, the spear, your instrument. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? And I remember one time, Tojima Sensei, after class, was working with one of the young teachers. And it was this motion. It was, here, 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 here. And the younger teacher was doing it, and he's just having trouble with it. Because Tojima Sensei would go like this, and he would go like something like, he would go like that, right? Boom, 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 right? And so finally, what Tojima Sensei told him was, he just said, Ishiki sugiteru, which means you're thinking about it too much. There's too much I in your motion. So if we can boom, 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 boom. Right? Okay. And one of the things we might do, was doing a little sitting this morning. And all I'd like to have you do is just, it's probably easier with the eyes closed because I'm not going to be doing any movement. In which you'll notice there's a lot of thoughts going on. Like if I want to get all of a sudden really quiet and all of a sudden there's kind of a storm of thoughts. But one thing I kind of want you to realize is the thoughts aren't necessarily real. Okay. Now, there is a phenomenon that you can have a real thought, but thought isn't necessarily real at all. I'm thinking a thought, That thought may be real, it may not be. So what I'm going to ask you is don't try to stop the thought, but realize thought is thought. Now, certain thoughts take me heavier. I start thinking about our president and everything, also certain elements of our immediate condition, social, economic, political. I get pretty heavy. So I'm going to say, basically, they're just thoughts. And when you can just say they're just thoughts, they become a little more transparent. And when I'm giving them too much weight, the thought's not supposed to have a lot of weight. If they're transparent, it's a real thought. Now that thought, for what it's about, doesn't have to be real at all. But certain thoughts, when I take them and make them too heavy, they have an effect on my particular being. And so a very common level of I is an unstreaming interior dialogue. So at some point, you don't stop it. You let the thoughts be transparent, they lighten up. If I start to get too heavy, I just relax. Observe the thoughts, just let them be like it. The thought is a real thought. But what the thought is about doesn't necessarily have to be real. And so just simply sitting. And if you've had some training, if you just there, that's actually a big thing. Because what happens is I reacts to thought and starts to change the body. So if you just say the thoughts are real thoughts, but what the thoughts are about isn't necessarily real at all. There's a transparency that starts to happen. The eye stays easy for itself. And after a bit, you start to settle into a different layer. And there are a lot of words for it: silence, calm. That's still going on. If you find yourself back there, just be very easy. Let the thoughts become transparent. You'll find certain thoughts have power over you. They cause you to kind of tighten and get heavy around them. But after a while, I say, okay, that may or may not be real. It's just a thought. It's a real thought, as opposed to something just hanging around my head. I don't even know what it is, causing me to be this way. So after a bit, you settle into a deeper, deeper space. And it has names like calm, clear. And you may not get to calm, you may get to calmer, or clearer, or quieter, or more stillness. You may not make it to stillness, but more stillness. And you got that noise up there, and you've got this other space. So what you start to do is play the percentages. Maybe you've got 40%, make it 60% there and 40% there. If you focus on the 40%, you get pulled up there. If you get pulled up there, fine. Make the thoughts transparent. But all of a sudden, if you're 40% of stillness or calm becomes a 60%. It's where you put your attention. And in that still place, things start to get more experiential, like breath. Not just knowing about breath. And get 60 to 80%. How do you do that? By just hanging out. And that stillness or calm, that's your friend. You find in that particular area, I is moving towards self. You find yourself up here, just be easy. Let thoughts be transparent. Certain thoughts are hollow. They appear to be real, but they're not. They are real thoughts. But the thoughts you're about may or may not be real at all. And that's a lot of the basis of meditation. It's just very easy. Very, very easy. Okay. Anyway, that was just something that struck me this morning. Certain thoughts make us heavier. And that's when the I goes. Okay, so if we can just realize that every thought is a real thought, but what the thought's about isn't necessarily real at all. In fact, somebody gave a definition of fear, false evidence appearing real. And so when we start to operate off of fear or reaction, this starts to go back and forth and we kind of get very heavy and tight, go up. Okay? So anybody with an observation on that? David, anything? It's pretty basic. I mean, I'm sure if you buy a meditation book or something, everybody's going to say, look, you're going to start out with all this. Like, what do? You let the thoughts become transparent. They are real thoughts. They aren't necessarily real at all. They're just thoughts. Anything?
Something you said about fear is that fear is something that you will sometimes feel when something bad is happening, but because you feel fear doesn't mean something bad is happening.
That's true. False evidence appearing real. Yeah.
So if something bad is happening and you're afraid, that's not a bad response. But if you're afraid, that doesn't necessarily mean something bad is happening.
That's true. If we're angry, it doesn't mean that there's something we should be angry about happening at all around us. It just might be some thoughts running through our head that trigger the heavier emotion. Fear is a very, very heavy emotion, as is anger. And so, you know, you don't necessarily do this stuff to escape. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the world right now that's extremely serious. On the other hand, if my mind is going around and around in anger and fear about it, is that my eye is getting trapped in stuff that's not going on immediately around me. That's why in a lot of ways, I really think a lot of the peaceful demonstrations going on are good. Because what's happening is instead of people pushing their fear and their anger down, they are taking action. And the peaceful side of it is good. I mean, there's some other stuff going on, but by and large, the social activism is peaceful. And then you get the other side that stands for control through fear and anger. And they are being, it's like the spotlight is on them. So in some sense, what happens there is the I to self journey is going more towards a truer root self. Okay? Now, one thing that we might try is pick up your instrument, boom, boom, see if things might have freed up for you. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Right? There's just motion. When I is in that clearer or calmer place, the relationship between, let's say, ki, the movement of energy, the body, and then finally the instrument, boom, boom, becomes much freer and fuller. Okay. Anybody, how'd that feel? Anybody? How did the movement feel after the sitting? Boom, 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 boom. See, any motion, there's a spiral. There's also the reverse spiral of it. Boom. These are tracks. You go here to here to here to here, to here to here, to here to here, to here, 4, 2. Boom, 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 boom. I get too busy out there. I get caught up in the thoughts, and then I make the thoughts heavy, and I'm caught. Now, if I get too sloppy, not going to get it. Because really, as the thoughts become transparent, and you get into, that clearer zone with yourself, the I gets through self, then again, there's a natural relationship with Ki. Ki moves, everything that moves first in Ki, right? And instead of going through the dialogue up here, it goes directly through the body. The mind is clear there. It's not obstructing. It has to do a little work to get what this movement is. But, for example, we could just wiggle the hips around, but there's the movement is from Ki. Any movement comes first through Ki. And mind is there, but it's there in a clearer way because the I isn't carrying this dialogue around. So mind and body are present. And then the instrument, Ki, can, but for me, Ki, Tai, can, Ki, Tai, can. So I can change the sequence of it from the way I was taught by Hikizuchi Sensei. Anybody with a comment? Move around a little bit. See how you feel. Yeah. Okay. Anybody thought what we do is just go through the Tai Chi set? Okay, but anybody before? Anybody with an observation? Bonnie, anything going on your end with this?
Since I noticed after the sitting and then when we started moving again, it felt more flow, felt more smooth. And like right now I have a pain in my shoulder, and after the sitting, I'm still trying to get rid of the eye of the pain, but I felt the energy flow more through it, which allowed everything else to seem to flow better. So I did notice an improvement. Yeah,
I know Robert Koga, he taught police tactics. It's kind of interesting. As far as I remember, he wasn't teaching chokeholds. He taught basic Aikido, which, in terms of arrest and stuff, I think George Floyd would be alive today if the officers had done an Aikido movement on him, you see. But that aside, one thing he told me was he had a broken bursa sac in his shoulder. He says, Jack, I can't raise my hand past here. I said, but in class, you're going like this all the time, right? And he laughed. He said, well, maybe it's a little bit of O-sensei's magic, right? Because the word was O-sensei kind of, especially his last period, he was pretty ill. He'd kind of go like this, and he got of an instant transformation. So, the point of it is don't try to, if you got a shoulder that's out, respect it, right? But sometimes you get a real breakthrough when you are, I'm seeing them. See, what was the Ken slow that day? Because Hikizuchi Sensei was teaching all this stuff about that. And so my I mind was trying to do it better. And then, of course, it was teaching to us as Jack, get out there. He said, your Ki is moving, which means, you can see the body was picking up the energy beam. And your Tai is moving, but he says your instrument isn't. And you want to see that. You want to see that. You want to see that. So ki, ken, tai, or ki, tai, ken, whatever. But your movements feel freer. That's good. Let that freedom be your guide. Now, the next step for you is when you start to get that freedom, there's something called warp drive. Like when I'm going this way, boom, 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 right? Boom, boom. So again, that blip is a vibration beat in the energy, right? It goes through the body first, then the instrument. Boom, boom. Okay? All right. Let's go through the Tai Chi set once, and then we'll just move into the kitchen area. Get a better camera angle. All right, let's do it. Yeah. Okay. See, one of the things about Tai Chi this tends to move faster when we get heavier. I get angry, it's really moving fast. I get afraid of something, just starts to pick up. So for Tai Chi, you're moving at a different pace. See, by slowing down, you might start to pick up the relationship between energy beat, the ki or the chi. And instead of having an instrument, the instrument is moving motion. Boom, boom. Okay? So, relaxing the chest, breathing naturally, commencement of Tai Chi. Anyway, we're going to go back into the kitchen area, and if you want to stay around, we'll kind of go over maybe more about sensei stuff or touch bases a bit more. Any similarities between going through the Tai Chi set and the sitting we did? Any observations? Or they're similar for me?
Yes, Sensei, I noticed the flow felt better with the Tai Chi movements, and it felt similar to the flow with the Joe. So I did notice an improvement.
Okay, David, anything?
The sections where I felt more confident of, not having to remember, but just knowing what the next movement was, I began to get a feeling that something was holding, something was lifting or moving me, and I wasn't having to lift my arms up and move them. So that feeling started to come through.
Well, a lot of the stuff that we're saying, that everything moves first in energy. Ki is actually, it's part of so many different things. You attach ki to the end of something, you make it into something. Like ji ki, magnetism, all right, or gain ki, healthy, good ki, healthy ki, byoki, sickness, sick ki. So Sadaharu, he's learning about Aikido and trying to integrate that into his batting. He kind of puts in his autobiography, says, you got to be careful with the word ki, because when you attach something to it, you create it. If you think genki, you generally are healthy. If you're afraid of byoki, sickness, oftentimes that drags your energy down. You see what I mean? So, if we were to say in Aikido, essentially that everything, the universe came out of ki. We come out of ki. We are ki, therefore. The universe is ki. Our ki, the universe can communicate, can have a relationship. And so we get the sense right there, in the movements today, there's ki. There's tai, ki, tai. Then there's boom, the ken, or the instrument. Okay? And Master Choi, he'd be doing a movement, and boom, all of a sudden, he would, that sense right there, you see, the way he put it to me was, you really do the movements, you relax as completely as possible. And the interior part of you establishes a relationship with what he called qi, which is Chinese for ki. He says, after all, boom, boom. The qi, you sort of, you line up, you let the qi or the qi move you. And so, he would demonstrate, he wasn't just somebody doing drifting movement, but, or with the staff, See, that's smoother now. The next step, boom, boom, boom. That's kind of a vibration in the dimension of ki. Goes through the body first, and you see it in the instrument. Or you see it in Aikido in the actual technique. We're going to be doing some instrument work because we're not able to have the actual contact work right now. So let's move. Okay, so we will, gonna move back here. Yeah, let's see if that's good there. Yeah, just a little bit, I just did a little bit of sitting today. I do other types of, sitting work, but I just kind of all of a sudden, it's just in this really reactive place. I was thinking, what's going on? I just realized, my thoughts were way too heavy. And then I started to kind of see the thoughts as being more transparent, which means I started to be very easier with my thoughts, not that, Pandemic, economic crisis, social unrest, president. And all of a sudden you are really in this dialogue here. So it was kind of like, and certain things, my sense of the protests going on is that the soul of a nation in the world, not just us, is awakening. It's good, as long as it's peaceful. And you're going to get some of the other anyway, because it's just the world itself is so polarized. But hopefully what will happen, if really, everything, the soul wakes up, one of the aspects or attributes of the soul is love. And the people that are spewing hate, hopefully will stand out. Okay? So, we'll see. So far, so good. But, things can change. Anybody with a comment or question on the sitting? I thought that was done, I think, okay. It's hard to do outside, so I don't know if we can do that out there tomorrow. But, the sitting itself is a good one. There are other styles of meditation that you can do, other sitting styles, obviously, but that's a pretty good one. Just realize your thoughts are just thoughts, they're real thoughts. And what they're about may not be real at all. And then what happens is we start to shift into finer dimensions of I to self. And then, because there's an area, where, for example, the actual relationship, everything starts in energy. Okay, so in other words, if we get to that area where we're kind of calm or empty enough, we have an emptiness that all of a sudden, the standing motion. See, I'm going to stand now. in the sitting motion. Or even the sitting motion. The ki can be very still and calm. Or it can change and go back to calmness, or change in different dimensions. So within that, it's one thing we can work on, in this crisis time, is establishing our relationship with ki. And I suspect, though, since that kind of, since the universe came out of ki, what he was talking about, when he was talking about the universe, he was also talking about ki. When he was talking about kami, he was also talking about ki. I remember one time, Hikizuchi Sensei pulled me aside after giving a lecture. He says, Jack, I want you to know I'm talking about the kami and their names. I'm not talking about people. He says, I'm talking about ki. Hikoto chigau, ki nan desu, is what he said. So essentially, light, that, or that, they have a different name, this flow, that flow. And if I'm a little too out there trying to figure it out, see, there's a disconnect, from the actual movement, because my mind takes it over here, so the body doesn't get it fully. Whereas the mind in a more empty, calm state doesn't interfere with that motion, or this motion, or this motion. So if we were to, just work on establishing, it's a difference because we all have our own ki. But our energy runs in too many different directions and it's way too fast. And the faster it moves, the heavier it becomes. So by making the thoughts transparent, you get to a level where there's less movement in those thoughts, less fear, less anger, less reaction. And the body starts at some point kicking, feels more relaxed. Breathing starts to become more natural. The Tai Chi movements are good because, somehow I'm pushed by the fact my own energy is going in too many different directions. So by slowing the movements down, you can go. And the movement of the spirit, or the soul. Or conversely, working with your partner. When you're working with a partner, they also have their own ki. Okay, but we're working together to understand that, in the Shio Nage term, I'm trying to move my ki to move your ki, but there's also ki moving around that. So the techniques can it's a word you don't hear much in Aikido these days. It's ki. It's very interesting. So Sensei talked about it a lot. Okay. Me. Anybody out there with a question or? See, in some sense, if you, for example, were to say that any emotion, if I went this way or that way, everything starts in ki. I'm just going to settle in and meditate. I might just be caught up there, but I can settle past that. For example, the actual ki it can be very still or very calm. And when I'm there, then self also starts to kind of bond with that calm. And then the fluctuations in ki start to you become sensitized to them as opposed to lost in this. And then things like discernment, which is the sword, intelligence, discernment, which is natural. And it can't be natural when there's all this this verbiage running around. Where, every thought is a real thought, but very few thoughts are about anything real. And that starts to become apparent. And instead of really trying to work on our key, we work on our relationship, our key to key, our own energy's relationship to the energy of the universe. And then we're maybe more on an O-sensei track. We may never get to the actual level he got to, but we're kind of matching his journey to some degree. And we'll be different. We can't copy him. He's a good example because of what he achieved in terms of the actual distance he traveled on the journey of his soul. To be honest with you, I don't want to have to dodge bullets. I don't want to have to deal with crazed military trying to split my head with a weapon. I don't want to do that. So, but we can take a lot of his design and his enlightenment and maybe it'll point towards our own enlightenment, so to speak. So anybody with a question or whatever? Well, if not, then I want to go over just, I think we may have covered some of this. But he goes through the 1, 4, 3, 8 quite a bit. All right. And oh boy, did I lose that place? Link yourself to the universe. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah. Aikido illuminates the inner principles of existence and reveals the divine inspiration of creation. So something had to be inspired to create the universe. We tend to think, that, okay, there's whatever it was, the great, Nadeau calls it the great seeding, the unknowable, whatever it is you want to call it. There had to be a spark, an inspiration for it to, in some sense, be with child. It was like the parent of creation. And so that inspiration, that we come out of that, therefore it's in us, that spark. And most times that's dulled by all this stuff. But boom, as we learn to settle with that, then boom, 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 boom. Boom. The past, present, future, and the entire spectrum of life are within our own bodies. So the universe itself has a design, which we see: time, space, gravity, electromagnetism, matter. And one thing O-sensei seems pretty big about is that there's something called spirit, that spark. And in oftentimes looking at the universe in very, very clinical ways, that's lost. What Einstein said was, all I want to know is God's thoughts. So I can understand God's thoughts. God created the universe, if I would understand the universe and how it works. So that was a pretty big paradigm for him. And so as we, for example, get out of our, and we go more I to self, the truer self, and we get closer to ourselves at our true nature, which is God, Goddess. And at that level, I think we start to also be privy to, quote unquote, God's thoughts. A God or goddess is not God, but it's an I going on its journey to self that's kind of actualized itself as a very original level of itself. So all of a sudden, And somebody once told me that if you had like the spiritual giants together, they would all get along, Christ, Buddha, whatever. But the followers would probably have a religious war. And that's always interested me a little bit, where certain people would go, oh, yes, you say it that way. My term for it is. But you realize everything comes out of something. And love is very important, not love out there, but as we go back to the truth of ourselves, and love becomes paramount among many things. Okay? So anyway, we're kind of at that particular thing. In Shinto cosmology, Izanagi and Izanami stood on the floating bridge of heaven and created the world. In a similar sense, we should recreate the world, make all things anew each time we practice Aikido. Such techniques of unlimited creativity are known as takemusu. All the kototama, seed syllable sounds, flow from the floating bridge of heaven, reverberate through the universe, and come to reside within our own bodies. Human beings are a reflection of the spirit world. And he was really big on the body, because I think he thought that the eye and the mind tended to kind of stay caught here. But the body, as you go finer, of course, mind and self start to also follow the body on its journey to spirit, or to itself as spirit being a realization. Okay, so those are just a couple of things. Let's see. Any questions? David, any observations through any of this stuff? No?
I don't really have a question. Sometimes I feel like I feel like you're talking about, you just have to be able to decide what order to digest your food in, and then everything will be fine. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what's going on in my stomach. How can I pick what order to digest my food in?
Yeah. A lot of it too is, all this stuff that he said was coming from a place. And he was describing that place in his own personal terms. What we do know was it wasn't just a philosophy. He had a bond with the energies of the universe. He was very conversant with them. I mean, he was an old man doing things that look these days totally fake. All right, that's one thing. I mean, like Robert Nadeau, Robert Fraser, my teachers at the Shinto School. That was like, okay, O-sensei, wrong. So, they realized he was doing something that was like off the charts. But, the whole sense is that, okay, you get caught up within a system, you get caught up within a culture, and whereas you respect those things. See, what's tricky is you really have to respect the office of the president. But then again, you have to discern the person with the title. And that's very much like a razor's edge. Okay? And so if we get a little too into this, and we get too heavy. And the thoughts start to spin that way too much. So yes, and the discernment is the sort of Aikido. Yeah. And on a bad day, we'll be back up here. So, but we have a map. And from here, see the whole thing about, say, you'll see it my way. It's like, no, you get to a place where you find your own sword. It's called discernment, not judgment. Up here, judgment. Deeper, fuller. This discerns. You can't govern through hate. You can't really unite by creating separation. All you're doing is your own agenda. And so, part of this is that, it'd be nice, for example, if the principles of Aikido would really take seed in the world and you see them in the leadership. That would be nice. Elle and I were watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. We actually went through the whole 7 seasons on Netflix. And she made a really good observation about Jean-Luc Picard. His first move in any encounter is to de-escalate. To move away from that. And that's a very difficult lesson because, yeah, so, it's very easy to get into hate and anger and judgment. And when we do, we're caught up here. And certain people know how to use that to create separation and stay in power. So discernment is the sword. There's no love without discernment. Just the sense that discerning what's loving, what's not. So, Sensei said real training is what he called shugyo, not just the actual keiko, training the techniques. Right? But that was supposed to refine the mind, the body, get through touch with self, to where you develop this sword, discernment. And what you find, with all the social unrest is that, one thing is that you find certain athletes speaking up and certain athletes and others not. In the sports world, it basically mirrors everything because there's a power structure. And most of the power structure is really, unfortunately, is white and it's male. But, I know the NBA, which I tend to follow of all the major sports the most. Well, you do have majority of the players are African American, Black. And basically, it's a very funny thing because the players tend to run the league. I mean, LeBron James, as much as I'm a Warrior fan, he's done an awful lot. He's starting something now to really get off the black vote. Okay, he's funded educational institutions, high school for Black youth, and a lot of that is because there's just a lot of inequity in the structure, and so that part of it. Really, we say Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. But there's been so much of that all of a sudden, Black Lives Matter. And that also contains with that all lives matter, but it's been so this way. So that's an important thing. Sensei wanted us to grow, to evolve. And, you know, I would like to see somebody that is like Jean-Luc Picard. I mean, you know, it's like where Captain Kirk, you know, his whole thing was described as cowboy diplomacy. And Picard is a good role model. I mean, I know there's a new series, which I'm kind of too cheap to get right now. But I know you can get it free, but you got to sign up for a month and then you usually forget, and all of a sudden you've got CBS access. So I've done that too many times. I may anyway. But anyway, that part of it right there, you know, is just it's real difficult to have any discernment when we're up here with the actual movement. See, the thing that I found is that people that are really, really good, the first thing that you sense with them is you actually sense the movement of the energy, and then the action comes off of that. And, you know, which means that the more eye that's there, the more you see the action out there, and the more somebody is connected, is the more you actually feel the movement. And then you see the motion. Whether, you know, you're holding an instrument, you know, it can be this way. Somebody like Chet Baker, for example, I don't think he knew what he was going to play. It was just a chord structure, and he would just, right? And a couple of professionals, you know, that you know, played with a variety of jazz greats. So most of the time you gig with, you know, go with some jazz star, and you listen to him for 3 or 4 nights. And, you know, after a while, I say, oh, okay, that's what they do. But, you know, apparently Baker wasn't that way. You know, I mean, he would replay, I mean, he played the same songs, but 2 different nights, it's like the whole mood, the whole changes he would use in the song were different. Charlie Parker's probably that way. I mean, the real greats, you know, what you're really seeing or hearing in music, you're hearing, you're really, there's a whole something going on in the melodic structure of key. And that moves, and then the sounds and notes come out. I mean, I try to play that way. I'm not on Chet Baker's level by any stretch of the imagination. But there's a point where after a while, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. Because knowing sometimes, you know, just, you know, just goes and then, no, that's good, that's not, that style. You just want to establish the relationship directly with the energy, the ki, the chi, whatever it is you want to call it, intention, whatever. And then that relationship, you know, involves a certain level of self. Self must learn, I must learn to go to self to develop discernment. Discernment is the instrument when we're not holding anything. We're going to discern to move here, there, here, this form, this form. But then the movement of the energy moves as we do, you know, as we get better at this. Or we have bad days if we're up here, where it moves through the body, then through the form or the instrument. Boom, boom. Then the movement frees up. And then you have the entire ensemble of the universe because you have a relationship with you. As that deepens, you add more pieces. And so what happens there is you're more direct through your body. And also, I mean, we're talking consciousness, not just body. You have a direct tie or relationship with ki or chi, or whatever you want to label it as, or kami, movement of the ki, which essentially might have described as kami, this, that, this, that. You might give them different names. All right? But that's all, as Hikisuchi Sensei told me once. We're not talking about people, Jack. We're talking about ki and how ki moves. Okay. Anyway, anybody observation, anything you want to add? Okay, tomorrow we will be trying our first group session. We will, as best we can, shoot it so it will be available via Zoom. Okay, so anyway, thank you all. Okay.